Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II.
And I'm Robyn Vincent. Today on the show, another school year begins, but the challenges are clear.
Not enough teachers, rising burnout, most third and fourth graders are not reading at grade level.
At the same time, there are glimmers of resilience in Michigan's teacher workforce. We'll unpack it all.
Plus, Detroit has seen big changes since 2013. Momentum, investment, and new leadership on the horizon.
But turnout at the ballot box is still lagging. We'll talk about what drives the gap between the city's future and who shows up to vote.
Also, men aren't visiting the doctor as often as women. We'll hear about one nonprofit trying to level the field for Black men in Detroit.
But first, in America, the average age of a home buyer is 56. In Michigan, a variety of sources say that it's closer to 40, but that's still incredibly high when compared to the average age of home buyers just a few decades ago. Now, the reason that people are buying homes later in life is because home prices have been rising exponentially. Many don't have the money to buy homes, even when they want to. Affordable housing just isn't plentiful. But there is political support behind changing this trend. Just 2 days ago, Governor Gretchen Whitmer applauded our state's housing agency for helping to build 75,000 new housing units over the last 4 years. And 2 weeks ago, a different organization proposed a plan to speed up home building and home repairs in the state. The Michigan Municipal League wants the state to spend $800 million over 5 years on affordable housing projects. So what's in the plan, and why is affordable housing so scarce in the first place? To discuss all this, we have Dan Gilmartin here. He leads the Michigan Municipal League. Dan, welcome to the Metro.
Great to be here.
So, Dan, I want to start by discussing what you do. You work with municipalities across the state, and part of what you do is try to understand the most pressing issues happening in our cities and towns. In doing that work, the League found recently that in cities of varying sizes and shapes, there is one common denominator, and that's housing. It's the biggest issue. Is that right?
That's true. There are a lot of things that local leaders and civic leaders are dealing with in their communities, whether it's a city of 2,000 people or whether it's the city of Detroit. But everywhere I go, we talk to local leaders that are just talking about we need more housing. We need different types of housing, and we really need a sort of an all-hands-on-deck vision of how we can get to this here in the state of Michigan, because it's a big issue everywhere for different reasons, and it speaks out the unique qualities of different communities. But it's something we got to tackle together.
So it's housing supply and diversity of that supply that is a problem everywhere, and not just in Michigan, as you've noted. Home buying is really, that's something that people are not able to do as early as they would like to in life. The average age for home buying, as I noted at the top, is 56 in the U.S. What's your understanding of how Michigan specifically came to this problem of not having enough affordable housing?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different reasons for it. And it's why, again, what we're talking about here is everybody sort of coming to the table to help fix it, because there's sort of responsibility all over the map of how we got to where we were. I'd say this, in our present state, we have a problem where the cost of building new, and in some cases the cost of even rehabbing, is sort of makes the structure itself unattainable for so many Michiganders, and certainly for so many Detroiters here in the city. So we've got to figure out a way to cut those costs where we can, be in partnership with local units of government, with the state government, with private builders, with community organizations, to make sure that we're getting at what we need, and then adopt the very best policies we possibly can in communities across Michigan that fit those communities, and take this thing on, and also provide some funding on the back end, obviously. That's one thing the state has done a bunch of. You mentioned the governor's successes that she's touting great stuff going on there and at MISHTA and other agencies. We want to do even more. We want to take this thing on because, as we like to say, everywhere we go, we talk about being in a housing crisis. If we're in a crisis, we need to act like it. And that's what we're trying to get to at this, with getting sort of all the partners at the table and trying to level the costs as much as we can, create different types of housings, be innovative in how we work on things, and get at people at all different income levels and all different parts of the state and for sometimes different reasons on what people are looking to buy.
Dan, you keep mentioning costs and how the costs are out of control. What are the forces that have contributed to that?
A lot of them. But just the general costs of labor have gone up, which is great. People should be paid absolutely what they're worth. But at the opposite of paying more means you buy more, meaning the cost is more. Lumber's gone through the roof, steel, all the different supplies people use are through the roof. This is before some of the tariff craziness. It certainly predates that, but that doesn't help either. So much of our materials, for example, our lumber comes from Canada, from a lot of the things that are built here in Michigan. So those are problems. And you just see that there hasn't been a lot of innovation around housing. We've seen some of it in cities that have been more that have been further along in terms of being innovative in their practices and what they're doing.
Can you name some of those?
Yeah, I think really you see it here in Detroit. You've seen a lot of buildings being converted from one use to another. That's been going on for a couple decades now.
I love seeing that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We're looking at different materials. There's certainly gains to be made in modular housing. There's gains to be made in partnerships between, again, city, state, private developers, you name it. There's a lot of really good things happening, and that's sort of that marketplace and that churning that happens when different people from different walks of life, if you will, are trying to solve the same problem. So you see some of that stuff going on. You see different types of developments, and we need to continue to innovate in that space so that we can provide you quality, attainable housing, whether you're at the beginning of your career, whether you're a mother or father with kids, whether you're retiring, whoever you might be, young entrepreneur, you name it. They all need a place in a community. Our work is to make great communities. And that tells us, all the data tells us, you got to be a place where everybody from all walks can be a part of it. And that's the places that really stand out and do well.
So innovation, born from real desperation, it sounds like, is something that's driving some of these new types of housing that we're seeing. Are there other cities you can think about in the state of Michigan that are doing interesting things? You mentioned Detroit. I realize housing affordability, it looks different in a city like Detroit versus, let's say, Grand Rapids or smaller places like Saginaw, Traverse City, more tourist type locations, which also have their own set of issues when it comes to housing and the housing crisis. So what are some other places, and can you talk about the difference in what housing affordability looks like in these different places?
Well, when I talk about innovation, I agree with you. Innovation happens when we're in trouble. Otherwise, it's too hard. Right? If everything is going fine, you don't innovate, right? And so we see that happening all over the country, really. I don't want to say anybody's solved it yet. I think actually in some ways that what we've put forward should be a model for other states to pick up because it is truly sort of all-encompassing in how we want to get at this. But nationally, places like Buffalo and some parts of Chicago, Minneapolis has been a leader in this in terms of what they're doing with their planning and zoning, how they're incentivizing more attainable housing in certain areas. They've had great success. In the state of Michigan, I'd point at Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids has long been a leader in what they do from a strategic standpoint in terms of trying to incentivize development within their areas, incentivize development at all different income levels. And they've now got over 12,000 people moving to their core. And their plans are to go 10,000 more. They've just done a rewrite of their entire plan. So lots of new types of housing, and I think that's important.
Tell me then, okay, so my assessment, it sounds like, was accurate. I was recently in Grand Rapids, and I was marveling at the downtown area because it seemed like there was a diverse array of housing options in that core area. And you're saying that is
There's
exactly
no question,
correct.
and that's all on purpose. And again, that's a group of community leaders working with neighborhoods, working with business, working with developers, doing, sort of providing those best practices to make sure that they get everybody in every different sort of walk of life. They've been very particular and deliberate about that, and it's paid dividends. And like I said, they've just done an update of that, and they want 10,000 more people in their core. And their core is bustling now, like it hasn't in, I don't know, certainly predates you and I. The last time it might have been bustling like this, and a lot of good things happening. And there are smaller communities that are doing some great work too, but that might be the most sort of obvious example of at a scale that gets at least, part of some of the issues we deal with here in Metro Detroit and Detroit proper.
This has me wondering about Detroit proper, actually, because, the joke about downtown Detroit is that housing there is really for the 1%. And so have we reached the point of no return in the downtown corridor when it comes to diversifying the housing there so that people of many different income levels can live there?
I don't think we have. Reached a place that's, sort of locked people out necessarily. They may be there now, but again, some strategic moves by the city and its partners, some strategic moves from the state, some best practices implemented, and Detroit's done some great work over the last several years. They've had a lot of building. But you can certainly aim in different directions, and we see that everywhere. I mean, we've talked a lot about attainable housing. If all we do is sort of take the city out of the game and just preempt and say, build what you want, you know what you're going to get. You're not going to get attainable housing. That's not where the biggest dollars are, if you will, if you're a private builder. And I understand that. That's the business they're in. But, as local leaders coming together with community groups, with community agencies, and deciding this is where our gap is. This is where we want to go. Maybe it's this income level. Maybe it's young families. Maybe it's retired. Whatever it is in a particular community or even within a neighborhood in a place like Detroit, you've got to be able to tackle those issues head on locally and use real thoughtful ways to get at your goals. And again, Grand Rapids has done that. Detroit's done that in some areas, but big city, we got to do it more, and we got to do more of it. So.
This is the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Dan Gilmartin, the Michigan Municipal League's Executive Director and CEO. We're discussing a plan his organization recently released to increase affordable housing across the state. And now we're actually going to get into that plan. You want to spend $800 million over 5 years to create more affordable housing. That's a lot of money. Yeah. You suggest cities and the state do a number of things, and this includes investing in changing zoning laws, rehabbing homes, assisting developers in building, and assisting employers to help alleviate housing costs for their employees. So it sounds like this is a very holistic approach. How did you all at the League come up with this plan?
Oh boy, we've been working with partners. We've been looking all over the country. We've traveled to other states. We've tried to assemble and have assembled the very best practices that are out there. I mentioned the Buffaloes and the Minneapolises and even some of the things happening here in the city. We know what's working. We know what's sort of getting at this issue from a regulatory standpoint at the city level. So we've got a plan here that says let's educate local officials in a much more direct fashion about what makes sense in their communities. Let's work with private developers to make sure that they're in a space and building in spaces where we really need them as a society, as a locality. And let's get the state involved at their level too and do things that they can help with. And obviously through the funding mechanisms that they have available, if we dedicate all that stuff sort of together and make sure that we're all educated appropriately, we've got the best practices, we've got some seed money here. As much as $800 million, just you and I, it's not a lot of money statewide when it comes to building homes. But it's a start, and we think we can attract banks, and we think we can attract philanthropy and others to the table, and turn that $800 million into a lot more, and turn those 10,000 houses into a bigger number.
Well, let's follow the money. Let's dig into the funding. There are two larger parts of your plan. That's the My Home Fund and My Home Grant. And the My Home Fund is a 2-year, $50 million revolving loan fund that could be layered with grant funding to address gaps for development needs. Right. What would that do exactly if it were implemented statewide? Paint us a picture.
Okay, so let me make it really easy here, I think.
Please.
I hope. Even low-income developers, meaning developers building for lower-income folks in the city of Detroit, are now building between $300 and $400 a square foot. Okay, that's what it costs to put a building up. Now, some are a little bit lower than that, so that's fine. Say it's $250 a foot. But if you take 300, which is a little bit closer to normal, that means for 1,000 square foot, which is very modest home that they're building, that's a $300,000 price tag. And that's not attainable.
That's
not
already
attainable.
Out of my price range.
Absolutely.
Dan.
That's not attainable for, I don't know how many Detroiters, but lots of them. And that's at the lower end spectrum. Those aren't, granite everything and cathedral ceilings and everything else. These are quality things. These are quality units that are being built, but they're being built for this group. That's the big gap. So maybe if people could afford 150, if people can afford whatever that is between that spot and that top number is where the gap financing has to come in. That's why you're not seeing a lot of this stuff being built. And you're actually seeing many of the private companies scaling back now. Interest rates are higher, tariffs are out there. And they're like, wait a second here, we're not going to jump into a new development because developments take a long time and you got to sort of wait through business cycles and work through them. So we see some of the slowdown there. We want to speed that up and we want to be able to bridge that gap right there so that if we can do a better job at the 300 end of what it is and maybe get it down to 250 or 200 or even lower, if we hope, if we can do that at the same time provide this gap financing so that people that can afford 150,000 or whatever the number is, they're able to get into these units, whether they're new, whether they're rehabbed, whether they're condos or walk-ups or single-family homes, whatever it might be. We want to do it all. We want to do it all where it makes sense. Not one size fits all, not just plop any apartment building down anywhere. Put an apartment building where apartment building needs to be. Put a single-family house where that needs to be. Put a walk-up where it needs to be. That's the goal here, and I think that's where the real secret sauce or special sauce is in this plan.
But of course, we need the political will to make this a reality. And your idea does have bipartisan support. Yep. What do you think the likelihood is that more money is given to municipalities from Lansing to build and refurbish more homes around the state? Well,
we're gonna fight like heck to see it happen. We did announce the plan last week. Do have some great bipartisan leaders behind us. There's a municipal caucus of officials at the state level who were previously in local government. We've been working with them quite closely on some of these issues. They understand this, and they're sort of bringing and introducing these concepts to their colleagues in the Senate and the House. Great relationship with the governor and MISTA and the people in the state agencies. We've long been partners with them. So we're really going to push this because, again, I'll get back to what I said a few minutes ago. If we're in a housing crisis, we got to act like it. We got to act like it. Other crises draw a lot more attention than this. We just talk about it at conferences right now rather than getting on the ground and doing things that are making us move forward. And I think we can capitalize on the things we have done, the great things we have done.
Of course, there is a lot of gridlock in the State House right now. This is a house that is divided, yes. Literally. So I'm wondering, what do you need to do politically to move through this gridlock?
We really need to bring forward a plan that's really in the design of the plan that helps everyone. And it helps everyone at their level. How Detroit implements this is going to be different than how a small town in the Upper Peninsula implements this. I was through there last summer. I talked to local officials all over the Upper Peninsula, and they're like, we need 5 homes in our community. We need 10 homes in our community. I mean, that's the scale they're at.
Sure.
They can't find developers. They can't find financing, that kind of stuff. That's a real issue in a town of 1,500 people or something that their closest neighbor is 30 miles away. Mm-hmm. They can utilize this plan. They can adopt those best practices and attract some funding. Whereas in the city of Detroit, a city of several 100,000 people, and are looking, they've got hot neighborhoods, they've got neighborhoods that aren't hot, they've got different groups that they're trying to work with. They can utilize these services to get at real needs and move. So making sure that we explain the realities of that to the legislature, and making sure citizens really understand this. If they want more affordable and obtainable housing in Michigan, they need to get on board with the My Home plan as well and really push legislators to move on this and move differently.
Dan, I want to go back to something you said about acknowledging this ongoing housing crisis for what it truly is, for the epic proportions that we are seeing when it comes to the housing crisis and how we address it. Should we shift our mindset from housing as a wealth-building asset to housing as essential public infrastructure, meaning something we invest in to stabilize people's lives and communities, even if that means less emphasis on price appreciation and more on affordability and access?
Well, have you been sitting in our staff meetings? No.
I had a
Do you have
bug.
a mustache and glasses or something? Yeah, it's one of the issues now because we see affordable housing, and there are different reasons why the costs of housing are going up. We've had private equity firms jump into the real estate market. We've got short-term rentals, which is a huge issue. Some neighborhoods are being bought up by outstate interests that are usually in completely for one reason and taking product off the market. And I'm an econ major from college. I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember supply and demand. If supply goes down, demand goes up. If demand goes up, price goes up. And there's some sort of simple aspects there that are changing the environment over and above the fact that lumber costs are through the roof and everything else. So again, holistically looking at this is important. But I think your point's a great one. I read where 80%, I just read this recently, 80% of individuals' wealth in this country is tied up in real estate. And we're at a point in this history, whether you make 20 grand a year or 200 grand a year, you're living paycheck to paycheck. For whatever reason, we can talk about that on another show. But so people are really have more emphasis from a financial standpoint on their home rather than it's a place to live. And yes, it'll appreciate. I'll raise my family here and sell it when I retire, and it'll help me there. Whatever the old school vision of a house was. Now it's basically people's nest egg, and in many cases, it's their only nest egg. So that's why I think people get so crazy excited about some of these things when they see change happening in their community, and why we got to preserve the ability of local people to go to City Hall and get answers, have input into these processes, and again, through best practices, decide what makes sense for Osborne, what makes sense for Southwest Detroit, what makes sense for Brighton, what makes sense for Harper Woods. And we think doing it this way of preserving that local voice and bringing best practices and bringing gap financing, that we can make a real dent in this.
Dan Gilmartin, Executive Director and CEO for the Michigan Municipal League. Thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Anytime. Great to be here.
Up next, Michigan has a severe teacher shortage. How did we get here? And how can we change that trend? We'll learn more right here on the Metro. Stay with us.